So I know that a lot of you guys have been watching this and ready for these results, and so are we. So we're gonna do, this is gonna be kind of a multi-part deal. Today we're gonna just talk basic results. You know, peak horsepower, peak torque. We're gonna talk about the two different engine combinations. But again, we'll have a version 2 of this the manifold testing video, so that way we can get into like really hardcore details of, you know, where they're peaking as far as, you know, like what manifolds are going to be better for different applications based on, you know, what kind of racing you're trying to do. So again, one thing I want to say is thank you to everybody that participated in this testing. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Jessel. Thank you, Dart. Thank you, all the guys that were a part of it. Thank you to SRF, to BTR for the manifolds. We look forward to sharing these results, guys. So we're going to do a quick overview of the different intakes that we're testing. And all of these manifolds too, by the way, guys, are all LS7. Let's go ahead and go through the list and why we're testing these things. Obviously, we want to start with MSD, guys, because, you know, it's been one of the most popular manifolds for, I don't know, a long, long time. You know, guys worried about stock hood clearance and so on. You know, so we've got the tried and true MSD. Of course, everybody knows the Holley High Ram, guys. This is a super popular for, you know, budget turbo builds and guys that, you know, want to try to maximize their power. And they all think because of Copo Camaros have them, they must be the best. But you're going to learn otherwise quickly. We have Square Root Fab. Actually, he was the only one. We announced that we were going to do manifold testing, guys. And nobody reached out except for Square Root Fab. So I got to give him props. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to test your stuff. Hope that we give you some useful data back. And again, if anybody else wants to put manifolds in this test session, if you want to see the results or you think, you know, that our results are not accurate, then you're more than welcome to join. The BTR Trinity, extremely popular manifold. You know, we feel that these all kind of fall in the same category. You know, they're in the same relative price range. You have the same combinations that, you know, guys are going to use these for. We wanted to get into the carb intakes. We're testing them with EFI, not carburetor, with the same throttle body on all. Another big reason I wanted to get into this debate versus all these other front mounts is because there's some people out there that say that this top mount distribution and a carb style intake is superior to any front mount. And we're going to show you guys the results, and, you know, that way we all have facts to, you know, to talk based off. So this right here is the 4.5 CID intake. So it's 4.5 square inches of runner area. This is the 5-inch. So that's, I believe, the largest one they offer. I think this is their medium. They might even have a smaller one at a 4-inch, but due to the size motors that we're testing, the 4-inch is not going to be compatible. So we didn't test it for anybody that's wondering. Then we've got the Frankenstein, our new cast intake. We've actually been working on this for a couple of years. The design's been done forever, but, you know, we've been fighting with foundries for years and years to get a product that's acceptable to us. So we finally reached that point. This is our first production piece. This is actually a 4.6 square inches, so it's going to be more comparable to the 4.5. You guys will see in testing kind of how they all line out. And then we go to what Frankenstein used to consider their more race-inspired, you know, for guys with bigger cubic inches, high boost, you know, higher RPM, LS base. We do offer this in a couple different configurations with the dual snout and a single. They both have been tested. So, you know, you'll have results on both sides. And then the whole reason for all this damn testing was that a year ago we sought out to try to change the LS market based on all the information and all the data that we've gathered from building everything from pro stock intakes, the pro mod, to blower manifolds. And we've taken so much data that we've learned over, we built this in 2016, guys. So 2016, there's been no other changes that Frankenstein's made. This is our very first introduction of a race intake for the LS community. So we said to ourselves, well, hey, if we want to be able to claim it to be the best, we got to test against the best, because we have respect for everybody in this room and anybody else that makes manifolds. The shit ain't easy. If it was, then, you know, your neighbor would do it. All we're trying to do is show the world what's the best for your application. Because maybe after we're done testing all this stuff, we might realize that, you know, this one's better for half your stuff, or this one's better for the other half stuff. We have a good idea, but that's why we're here, guys, to introduce you to a real intake manifold dyno test session. All right, ladies and gentlemen, friends and foes, let's talk about the first engine that we built to test. I want to clarify, we didn't build these engines. KPE built these engines. Tommy at KPE, we want to say thank you very, very much. Excellent engine builder, super talented guy, great history with, in the professional racing world. So if anybody hasn't heard of Tommy at KPE, go check him out. We're going to talk about engine number 1. It's a 427. Compression ratio is 12-1 on Sunoco 93. So it's a pump gas motor. Cylinder heads that were used on this engine is the Frankenstein. It was actually the first time we got to test these heads. It was our M712s. So it's our new Monster Line LS7 head. A little breakdown on the cylinder heads because I'm sure people want to know. It used a 2200 intake valve. It was a titanium intake valve. It used a 1614 exhaust valve. So basically the same exact sizes as a stock GM LS7 head. Intake port volume was 283 cc's. Exhaust port volume is 95 cc's. Combustion chamber volume is 64.5 cc's. This is a 4125 bore motor combo, so there's lots of ways to build a 427, but it's a 4125 bore, 4-inch stroke. Intake flows, let's say at 400 lift, it was at 303. At 650 lift, right around where the camshaft is, 390 CFM, right around peak lift of the camshaft. On the intake, exhaust flow is 253 at peak camshaft lift and 200 at 400 lift. The camshaft was a comp cams, 247 on the intake duration, 261 on exhaust durations with a 114 lobe separation, and it was 660 lift intake and exhaust, guys. One thing we want to say is, we really enjoyed doing this testing. This testing was not to throw anybody to the wind. We were just curious. We've seen many different tests online. We've seen a lot of tests that we know were bought and paid for. So we wanted to just do a non-biased test. We were asked by several different manufacturers and people that were curious. And so that's how this ended up happening. Frankenstein and KPE spent our time, our money to go and do this on our own. And actually, to be honest, the way this testing really began was we worked all of 2024 on a brand new intake manifold, a billet manifold called the F0. For those of you who don't know what it means, it's fuck everything. We put everything there could be at the moment into this intake manifold that would be viable for the masses. When we built this manifold, we said, well, we need to make sure that we're getting the results that we want. And then that's how this whole manifold testing came about. So this actually started beginning of 2024, and we just wrapped it up now. So a year and so on of testing, not all dyno testing. We have probably 3 months, 4 months dyno testing. Let's get into some results. We're going to start from the bottom to the top. We're not saying this is the shittiest to the best by any means. These are just numbers, and then video 2 will get into details because some of these manifolds that might have made less power might still be the best for your application. So remember, we're not trying to just say this is the best and this one sucks. So we're just giving you data. So the first manifold we're going to talk about is the MSD plastic manifold. Super popular, great streetcar manifold, makes great torque. So the results on the MSD was 734 horsepower at 6,700 RPMs. It made peak torque at 641 at 5,700 RPMs. So that was the lowest man on the totem pole as far as power goes. Next in line is a CID 4.5 out of the box, not modified. That one made 741 horsepower at 7,000 RPMs. So you notice it makes it at a higher RPM, which is important. Torque was 619 at 5,500 RPMs. Lower torque, shorter runner. It's as simple as that. It has a shorter runner than the MSD, so it made less torque. The next in line would be the Holley High Ram, guys. So that one made 760 horsepower at 7,100 RPMs and 630 foot-pounds, or 629 foot-pounds to be exact, at 5,900 RPMs. So, it was pretty interesting to see the high ram. That's also a very common used intake manifold. Next would be the Frankenstein Low Pro billet. It made 762 horsepower at 7,200 RPMs. It made 623 foot-pounds at 5,700 RPMs. The next would be the BTR Trinity intake. The Trinity made 764 at 7,000 RPMs and it made 627 foot-pounds at 5,400 RPMs. It's extremely close to some of these other ones, and kudos. The SRF, so the square root fab, that came in next at 768 horsepower and 7,100 RPMs. It made 630 foot-pounds at 5,600 RPMs. So congrats, for somebody that doesn't do this for a living, awesome job, man. Keep up the good work. The next in line would be the CID 5-inch. So this is the bigger version of the CID. This CID, all disclosure, did have some port work from Wilson Manifolds. Made 778 at 7,200 RPMs. And it made 645 foot-pounds at 5,500 RPMs. So you can see even just the difference in the two CIDs, the smaller cross-section versus the big cross-section is the only difference. And yes, the 5-inch does have port work, but the port work might be worth maybe 10, in my opinion. It hasn't been heavily modified. It's just tastefully modified. Next would be the new Frankenstein carb intake. Now, we've been working on that thing for a couple years, not really refining it, just battling with different foundries, but we finally have some test pieces. So the one that we tested is our only version we have right now, which is a 4.6 cross-section. So it's more comparable to the CID 4.5. Made 778 horsepower at 7,100 RPMs, and it made 639 foot-pounds at 5,500 RPMs. Next in line would be our Freak Show, the Frankenstein Freak Show intake manifold. That Freak Show made 784 horsepower, 7,400 RPMs, made 638 foot-pounds of torque at 5,500 RPMs. Last but not least is our F0, which is the manifold that we worked on for a while, for a year. That one made 789 at 7,200 RPMs and 640 foot-pounds of torque. One thing that is going to be very interesting that you guys are going to notice is that these numbers are for the hydraulic roller engine. And keep in mind that just because some of these manifolds that you guys thought would make more power and they didn't make it, or maybe some that you thought would make less and they made more, keep in mind that the engine demand, a lot of these intake manifolds are a lot more than what that motor need to be efficient. Keep that in mind, and you're gonna start seeing a much bigger spread when we get to the solid roller motor where there's more demand for intake charge. So that is the hydraulic engine combo. All right, so now we're gonna talk about the 427 solid roller. So the engine combo, 427 solid roller, 12:9:1 compression using Sunoco Maximal 116 fuel. It is utilizing Frankenstein F710 cylinder heads, which is an LS7 style cylinder head for those that don't know. The intake valve is a 2250. It is titanium. The exhaust valve is 1615 stainless steel. The intake port volume is 280 cc's. The exhaust port volume is 114 cc's. Combustion chamber is 66 cc's. Peak flow on those heads, intake and exhaust, let's say peak flow at camshaft peak, 900 to 930. Intake is in the 440. The exhaust is 300. So those are some peak flow numbers, a little information on the cylinder head. The camshaft is 280 degrees intake duration, 302 exhaust duration, 936 intake lift before lash and deflection, 900 lift on the exhaust, and it's on a 116 lobe separation. At the bottom is the MSD. Obviously expected, I would hope, from everybody just because of what that manifold was built for. That manifold made 831 horsepower at 7,100 RPMs. It made 649 foot-pounds of torque at 5,900 RPMs. Really not too bad, for what it is, not bad. Next would be Trinity. So to clarify, the Trinity on the solid roller engine, there was two different plenums to test. First plenum uses a 102 millimeter throttle body. Same one that we tested on the hydraulic. So with the 102 throttle body, Trinity made 851 at 7,600 RPMs, and it made 596 foot-pounds at 7,200 RPMs. Then the CID 4.5, that one made 883 horsepower at 7,700 RPMs, and it made 627 foot-pounds of torque at 7,000 RPMs. Then we go back to the BTR, but this time it has a larger plenum, has a 120 millimeter throttle body, which was pretty cool to see this difference, right? With the big throttle body and the big plenum, it made 897 at 8,100 RPMs. Pretty cool little jump there, you know? I mean, you've got 500 RPMs higher peak and almost 40 horsepower, so not bad. Or, well, it was 40 horsepower. And it made 632 foot-pounds with the bigger throttle body and the bigger plenum at 7,100 RPMs. After the Trinity, we go to the Frankenstein Low Pro intake with a 102 throttle body. It made 902 horsepower at 8,300 RPMs, and it made 614 foot-pounds of torque at 7,000 RPMs. We expected the torque to be low. It's the shortest runner of all the manifolds. Number 6 is the CID 5-inch, 5 square inches. The CID also has a little bit of work done by Wilson Manifolds. Again, I don't know if I mentioned this before on the hydraulic testing, but it might be worth 10 or 15 horsepower over a stock CID. Let's just call it 10, because it's not a tremendous amount of work. So anyways, the CID 5-inch made 903 horsepower at 7,600 RPMs, and it made 639 foot-pounds at 7,000 RPMs. The next one would be the Frankenstein 4.6 square inch carb style. That one, we also tested that one with 2 different throttle bodies, or 2 different top throttle bodies. So the first one we tested with the same throttle body that we used on the CIDs, and that is a Holley 2000 CFM throttle body on the top with a Dominator 4500 flange. Our fed intake with that throttle body made 913 at 7,900 RPMs and made 642 foot-pounds at 7,100 RPM. Then we switched the top on the Frankenstein carb intake and we put our dual 90 throttle body adapter. So one cool thing is the Frankenstein carb intake has 5 different adaptable tops. So you can go from 4,150, 4,500, yada, yada, yada. We'll get into that in video 2. But anyways, we used the dual 90 throttle body and it picked up about 7 horsepower, made 919 at 7,900 RPMs, and it made 643 foot-pounds at 7,200 RPMs. Then in 8th place is the Frankenstein Freak Show. That manifold made 927 horsepower at 8,300 RPMs, and it made 638 foot-pounds at 7,400 RPMs. Last but not least is the F-Zero, Frankenstein F-Zero, netted 947 horsepower at 8,300 RPMs and 658 foot-pounds of torque at 7,000 RPMs. So, as you can see now on the bigger motor, or not bigger cubic inch wise, but the higher demand solid roller engine, you can see that the split in horsepower and differences have gotten much different. You can see where the manifolds that are designed more for all-out racing are starting to kind of, climb further and further away in results than the other stuff. And, that's expected. Keep in mind, guys, there's a huge price difference on these manifolds. Every single one of these has a purpose. There's a buyer for each one of these. There's a perfect customer for each one of these. We're not trying to throw shade on anybody. You have some of these manifolds that are under $700 and you have some that are over $6,000. That's a pretty big difference, guys. Now, one thing that we've always prided ourselves on and told everybody is Frankenstein is not trying to race to the bottom. We're not trying to compete at a low price level and compete with the masses, because we're not designed to do that. We focus on quality and precision and high performance. And again, there's buyers for our stuff, and then there's tons of buyers for all the rest of it too. So I think everybody should be super proud of the results. They all serve a purpose. They all meet market demands in different ways. And it was a pretty cool test to see. So one thing we're gonna do, guys, this is just the basic results so that, you guys can kind of talk amongst yourselves. What we're gonna be doing is some cool things. We're gonna be doing a live Kyle Crawford Goat Rope Garage. Shout out to him, because he actually invited us to be on there, and I'll be on there live with him, and we'll be talking over results. We'll be taking live questions and so on. Then I'm also gonna launch another video to try to address the more detailed questions, guys. We understand that there's been lots and lots of questions, lots and lots of debate, lots and lots of, oh, well, you know, you need to see this data and that data and so on. And we're gonna get into all of that at another video. So that way we can get in detailed about average powers and where they peak and the differences and the applications you're gonna wanna use different manifolds for. Keep in mind, guys, we invited anybody that wanted to come to these tests to come. But as you can see, the manifolds we got, not everyone wanted to participate willingly. We didn't test every manifold known to man, but tested the majority and what the masses are using. So again, we hope you guys enjoy the data. We're looking forward to some questions. We'll have some more videos coming out so that way hopefully you guys learn, we learn, and we go from there, guys. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe. We're trying to grow this channel so that way we can give you guys more education and we can try to bring more tech to the world that are, you know, backed up with proof and results and, you know, not keyboard warriors just spewing out false information. So we hope that you support us. Rock on, guys.